So let me have the privilege of introducing the next topic and the speaker. So it said that world is a global village. The statement is made by Mr. Herbert Marshall McLuhan, a Canadian professor, philosopher and public intellectual, in his book, The Gutenberg Galaxy in 1962, 30 years before the commercialization of internet. By this statement, he means that the globe is constricted to a small village by technology. People across the globe are connected by computers and televisions, which facilitates instantaneous movement of information from every quarter to every point at the same time. Today, we are witnessing that financial services industry is a testimonial to that statement in a way that many financial planners and advisors are connected to their clients overseas by technology and offering their services. Hence, it is imperative for us to be familiar with the global practices, especially in the area of personal financial planning. So KMT dedicates this evening to learn certain global perspectives and on the topic, the financial planning with cross-border families from US perspective. We are privileged to have with us Mr. Paresh Shah, a financial planner from US, who will facilitate and enlighten us on this topic. A brief intro about Mr. Paresh Shah. He is a financial planner for past 17 years and supports the clients, individuals and businesses to co-create a superior financial strategies that helps them to protect for the present and build for the future. He is certified continuous professional education presenter, educating CPAs in US in the areas of investments, life insurance, disability insurance, and long-term care insurance. He specializes in the area of pension, profit sharing plans, asset protection, estate planning, and business succession plan. Mr. Paresh Shah is also a member of New York City Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors, and for the past 6 years, he is a member of prestigious $1 Million Round Table, including 2 years membership to Court of Table. He has graduated as a chemical engineer honors from prestigious IIT Kharagpur. And he has a passion and a concern for professionalism and community service or public service. He supports many initiatives in the areas of education and health, especially for the financially challenged. He is a trustee of Rotary Eye Hospital, which conducts thousands of surgeries free of cost to the lowest strata of the people of the lowest strata of the society and annually supports such events. He is also a trustee of Somnath Temple, which is in Gujarat. Mr. Paresh Shah and his wife also support a school for deaf and mute in Bhavnagar and also a school for blind in Gujarat. He also supports our extensive activities in US also. He works with the charities who help get the job, who help these autistic adults to get the jobs. He stays in New York along with his wife. I'm sorry with name pronunciation, Shimul, if I'm right. And their son Shemak is a freshman at Stony Brook University, New York. He is a registered representative and investment advisor of Park Avenue Securities, the financial arm of the Guardian. So he is a brief intro about Mr. Paresh Shah. I'm sure he has a lot of information to share with us and take us to the global perspectives. So please join hands in welcoming Mr. Paresh Shah, and I request Mr. Lowai to come on stage.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for such a wonderful introduction. I mean, of all the times that I have been introduced, you're only the second person who has taken the effort to try to read the whole biodata in advance and try to tell people without referring. So I really commend you for that. Most people don't take this effort. They just pick up the sheet at the last minute, somebody hands it to them and they start working on it. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that. You might have observed that, after the 15th question was asked, I kind of went out of the room. Actually, I got scared after all these questions. I mean, this was tough, and I am a quizzer from my IIT days. So considering that, I realized the level. By the way, the two questions that I got right, one of them was the one which had the bear answer, and the second one was last week tonight with John Oliver. So now you know what level I've fallen to. None of the financial questions I knew the answer to. Only those two questions. But on a coming to a serious note, today's conversation. My goal is, I've tried to put together the work that I have done with some of the clients and how it has helped my practice. One of the things that I've come to understand, and we've tried to incorporate in our practice in the last few years, as was put very correctly, the world is a global village. We've realized that cross-border families are more a norm than an exception. I mean, if you look through families, especially if you go through just the first, let's say there are parents in their 50s and 60s and then kids in their 20s and early 30s. If you look at parents and their brothers, sisters, that generation and then the next one, you'll find that in most families, somebody or the other is not residing in India anymore, is living overseas and is therefore subject to different rules and regulations. And that's a huge market to be explored. After all, we share a common currency, our native language, the way we speak. That becomes easier. Even in the US, as I was sharing with Luwai today, that my practice was initially based only on meeting and working with Indians and Indian families and Indian business owners. And then eventually, over a period of time, we've been able to add mainstream Americans in our practice. Today, it's about 65% is still people of Indian origin. I should say South Asian origin. A few Pakistanis, a couple of Bangladeshis, no one from Sri Lanka. Not gone that deep south as yet. But so there is a common thread, and when that thread is explored, I think we can do a lot of work. I do wish to point out that we are in US facing a very serious situation because of what was expressed in that show, last week tonight with John Oliver. That was a show where they talked about the new Department of Labor regulations that are a law now. They are in effect. And the implementation begins in April of 2017. And everything will be completely in implementation in April 2018. We believe that there's going to be a big wipeout in the financial planning industry. A lot of the planners are not going to continue the practice just because of the overbearing regulations and overbearing effects that come into play. The concepts are very simple, but when implemented in a litigious society in US where everyone is looking for a way to sue you, these things don't bode well for the industry. Having said that, it's in effect, and we have to live with it and we have to work with it. So how does one of the things that I request you is that there's no need to wait till the end for questions. Let there be a discussion. If there is anyone who has had a similar experience to something that I'm sharing, please stand up and let's talk about it. The group discussion always enhances the learning experience for everybody concerned. So what am I trying to complete today? I'm trying to talk a little bit about what I'm gained, and then I'm going to talk about 4 case studies, starting with there's a client in US who's going to receive a substantial inheritance, client in India, kids in US citizen client who moved to India, and client in India with assets in the US. I mean, everything sounds similar, but each case has a different element that I wanted to try to highlight through our discussion today. And there is no really, the approach of financial planning that we've always kind of tried to, all of us try to work with is to get a holistic view. I mean, to try to get the whole picture and to work with people. But then again, when we're working with cross-border, laws are different, tax laws are different, effects are different. In fact, today when I was sitting with Lovi, we learned something new, something that I didn't know about how a particular type of asset, how it is taxed in the Indian context. And for me, after 10 years and trying to look at things from here also, for clients who are subject to taxation here, this was a new learning experience. So I think there's a lot to go on either side. And don't know what I did here, but anyway, what I have gained by doing this thing? Essentially, expanded the offering, had greater integration for client. We've added about 3 million in additional AUM. We're expecting to add another 10, 12 million in AUM this year, and about 250,000 in additional premium, life insurance premium. But the most important point, I think, is this: better client retention. When these clients have understood that we are able to address these situations, when we are able to talk about these things, when we are able to help them through and guide them through these situations, we've had amazing client retention, and that just speaks well for overall how the practice has grown. So let's just start straight off with the first case that I'm going to talk about. This is a client who had an income in excess of $1 million a year, has assets greater than $20 million in the US. So what happens when the income level is high is that most of the deductions on taxation are lost. That means if you have, like in US, when we have people who pay mortgage, the mortgage interest is deductible directly from your income, right? Now, the moment your income goes above $1 million, you lose that deduction. Of course, you could lose it. Interest remains, but real estate taxes, that means the property taxes we pay, those are also deductible. You lose that deduction also. So when that income goes above that level, we are losing a lot of our deductions that the client has. Then after that, he has estate taxes to pay. So estate taxes are, so all your life, you're taxed on your income, right? That means we have 2 parts to any company's financial statements has 2 parts to it: the income and expenditure statement and the balance sheet. Through your life, you pay taxes on the income and expenditure statement. And at death, the US government charges you on your balance sheet. What you're left behind to the next generation. The laws in the recent years have changed so that only those who leave in excess from the federal estate tax perspective, there's still some state tax element. Not going to go into those details because across 50 states it's all different and confusing. But let's just talk about the federal tax. That means the what is charged by what I would call the national government, the federal government we call it. So in that case, if any individual leaves anything above $5.5 million, then 40% of that goes away as estate taxes. That means for this particular person, between husband and wife, they can pass on to the next generation $11 million, and on the remaining $9 million, 40%, that means $3.6 million will have to be paid as estate taxes when they pass away. That's the estate tax. It's pretty brutal for those who have accumulated assets. But it has also got a purpose to it. There are some capital gain advantages which come to the next generation for those who have lesser wealth. also what they say is that if estate taxes has not been in existence, then 13 families would still have all the wealth in US. That a study showed that they had so much wealth, but the depletion across generations and the estate tax payable kind of made it a distributive society. So we all along we say that the capitalist country, but taxation sometimes looks like we are more a socialist country than a capitalist country. But anyway, this level, at this level, there's a lot of planning needed for this thing. So he has estate taxes to pay. Now inheritance will add pressure to it. And what's the big change that has happened in the last decade has been with Dash in India. I mean, can anyone fill in the blank? What has been the big change in inheritance? Inheritance which a US person will receive from India. What thing has changed drastically? I think I'm not framing the question correctly, but I'm sorry.
India hasn't had estate duty.
India doesn't have estate tax, but the biggest thing has been, I'm sorry, I'm not framing the question properly, the value of real estate. I mean, previously, like let's talk about the 90s, anyone living in the US with this kind of wealth and having say $1 million, $2 million home, wouldn't have the flat that he had in Bombay or Bangalore was not worth that kind of money. Today, some of the properties across India, several of them are more valuable than most of the homes in the US. So suddenly, the 2-bedroom hall kitchen flat or 3-bedroom hall kitchen flat is worth 3 crores or 5 crores, which is like $500,000, $1 million, and that $1 million, when added to this 20 million, is 40% of that is going to go away. So that's another added pressure that takes place for these clients when we're talking about taxation. Everybody is happy to receive the inheritance. Yes, please.
How will they pay the tax? So if it's a real estate.
I'm sorry?
It's a real estate asset that they are holding. So you have to sell that and pay 40%, or how will they pay?
That's why. So let me first clarify. I think I want to clarify. When money is received from the parent here to the child in the US, there is no taxation. But when this person receives this asset and his 20 million becomes say 21 million, then that 1 million, when he dies, his kids have to pay 40% on that. Now you said it correctly that how do they have to do it? They have to pay the money within 9 months of the person passing away. And often, if not planned correctly, then you have to sell, you do fire sale on assets and pay the money. That results in a lot of lost wealth. Your valuation is 20 million, but when you do fire sales, you get much lesser money. So as financial planners, what is the most obvious solution to this?
Financial assets.
Sorry?
Insurance.
Life insurance. This is probably the largest sales of life insurance policies in the US take place for paying of estate taxes. Yes, please.
So this was actually a beer moment. Classmate of mine inherited property from his parents, and he wanted to give his sister her share. I googled it and found that if she was getting an inheritance, she would pay tax.
Which country was this?
India to the US, and I do not know the state. But I found that a gift received from anyone would not be taxable. So I suggested that instead of inheritance, just give her a gift. And
not from the US perspective. First of all, from the US perspective, you're correct about the gifts part of it. So let's talk about the gifts. Any foreign person can give unlimited gifts to a US person. And let me also clarify, when I say US person, what do I mean? A US person is a resident of US with any status, visa, permanent residency, green card, any status. And all citizens, wherever they reside in the world, okay? So they can receive gifts from anyone, but if the gift is above $150,000, there's a reporting mechanism all created to ensure there's no money laundering and stuff like that. Okay, so that's with the gift. Inheritance, if you have the proper documentation, there is no tax on inheritance. There is no inheritance tax. There is only estate tax. That means in New Jersey state and in a couple of other states, there is some inheritance component, but it is not for foreign inheritance from all the material that I have read about it. Okay, so they can receive it. He can also. So are you saying that the brother is here and the sister is in the US, and the brother received anything and wants to give the sister a share? Very easy, just to show that it was an inheritance, and or if the brother gives it also, it's fine. But inheritance will not attract taxes.
Googling in a pub is not very effective.
I'm sorry?
Googling over beer in a pub is not very effective.
Yeah, yeah, probably. Unless you're in Belgium, where you get it on tap in your home now at a subscription. Wow, that's pretty cool. I think I'm going to change my style, paint my home, to this place. Okay. Any other question? Am I missing anybody? No. Okay. So essentially, I'm going to take a few moments to very quickly highlight what are the things that we did in the US for this particular client. And I'm going to take a just quick overview before we come to what was done for the parents. We set up what is called a family limited partnership. It's an entity that will own the entire $20 million. Family limited partnership, if you want an equivalent to the family limited partnership, it's like an HUF here. Okay? The family limited partnership is managed by the general partner. Normally we have, unlike here, where only the father or the male karta is the person handling the HUF. There, you can have more than one general partners. Usually we keep both the husband and wife as general partner, and they'll have a small interest, and they'll have all the voting rights and control on the property. And then the remaining interest we divide into small limited partnership. That means they have a right on the income which is distributed, or if eventually the family limited partnership is dissolved, they'll get their share based on how much they own. But they do not have any controlling decision making on any of the assets. Okay, so when we do that, there's a technique called discounting. And again, I'm getting a little too complex here, but just flow with me. There's a technique called discounting whereby the actual value of the asset goes below 20 million. We can bring it down to about 15 to 16 million. And therefore, effectively, when that 9 million, the taxable estate, which was 9 million, we shrunk it to 4 million or 5 million. And therefore, we saved about 20% of 5 million, which is about 40% of 5 million, which is about 2 million in estate taxes. This kind of setting up this kind of structure and doing all the things associated may cost anywhere between $20,000 to $40,000 in fees, depending on the size of the asset. But it's worth it because you're saving $2 million just by doing this one move. So we did that. Then there's when I come to another part of the presentation, I'm going to talk about the tax saving techniques that we use up there. Income tax saving, and that's what we did for this person. But then let's come to let's go ahead and let's come to, we set up captive. I'm going to go into that later. Setting up estate plan, asset protection, estate taxes, and inheritance protection. So what does this also do when we set up this kind of structure? Because the individuals who are limited partners, they do not own a controlling interest. That means the children do not own a controlling interest. If they are sued, that means if let's say I set this up, my son is now 18, he drives, he gets into an accident situation, and I have done this thing for him. Unfortunately, I don't have 20 million, but I wish I could do it, but no. But let's say I did this, and he got into an accident situation. Because he owns only a limited partnership and no control, those assets cannot be attached in a lawsuit against him. So we brought in asset protection, we brought in estate tax reduction, and we brought in inheritance protection. That means that what we also did was that when the child inherits it, he'll inherit it in a trust. and that trust will give him protection when he in case of a lawsuit against him, or in case of a divorce. So let's say, imagine that somebody's child is somebody inherited $5 million, got married and has a divorce, then half that money will go to the spouse. And in order to prevent that from happening, there are 3-4 easy ways, but one of the best things to do is give all the inheritance in a trust. We advise that for any person who is a US citizen, even if they have assets here or assets in the US, you should do that. Family limited partnership, I won't go into slats. Then of course, what paid me in this case, which is the life insurance portion of it. And this is the important one which I wanted to talk about from the Indian perspective. So we asked him to approach his parents and said, in this case it was a single child, in other cases it might be several children. So if somebody approaches their parents, it could be like, can I talk to my parents about it? Will my parents think that I'm trying to grab assets before time is due? Why is my child talking about my death? What's happening here? Things like that. But then in this case, since it was single parent, single child, there was an easy conversation. What was done was the parents' wills were created here, and within that will was put in place a trust. Let's put some names to this, okay? Let's say A is the parent, B is the child, and C is, so this is the grandparent in India, this is the parent in the US, and this is the adult child in the US, okay? So in the will of A, it was said that everything would go to a trust for the benefit of B and his children. And that particular trust would continue till the last child was alive. And when the last child was alive, it was to be distributed in equal proportions to the heirs of that children. That's how that trust is set up, with permission. In this case, this person would be the trustee. So the trustee would control everything. What's a trust? A trust is essentially, I would say a trust is like a private limited company. How would you say it? Why? Because the trustee acts like the board, and controls has all the signatory rights, controls everything, while the shareholders are like the beneficiaries. So they get income distributions if the trust earns income. If the trust assets grow in value, then the trust gets it. Now why was this important? Because the moment it's put in this trust here for the benefit of the parent and the child, it skips this inheritance. It skips. So we were having taxation from here to, there was no taxation from here to here, but there was a estate tax to be paid when money went from here to here. And we skipped that because the child was also a co-beneficiary inside the trust. There's specific language needed. You need to talk to an Indian attorney to draft it correctly, but it is possible, it is doable. And sometimes I've faced certain thing when setting up these things in the Indian context. I've faced questions which y'all are best suited to answer. I don't have answers to. I've been told that in the US we set up what's called, I'm using a technical term here, testamentary trust. A testamentary trust is a trust that is born on the day B dies. That means in his will it is written, or in this case the grandparent dies. If that person was a US person, he would set up a testamentary trust. That means on the day he passed away, the trust would be created, and till then there's no existence of the trust. So the person passes away, the will dictates that the trust be created, and then assets will flow into it, and those will be for the benefit of the beneficiaries, whoever they are named. I'm not necessarily sure because I've got conflicting opinions. Some people say that you can set up a testamentary trust in the Indian context. Some attorneys have told me that no, you have to set up a trust today. You have to fund it with maybe open a bank account and fund it with maybe 1,000 rupees or something like that, and then in the will name that everything will flow into that trust later on. The effect is the same both ways. But what came out of this case was this, that when we sat down and worked with the particular clients, because this was an open case where we were able to have the conversation with my client, we found that there was monies sitting on the sideline in the parent's name, and the local advisor could get AUM and start investing the money. No need for any life insurance in this case or any insurance product, but there was good amount which could be invested, and it was invested in India to be kept invested at local growth rates, so that money was available when for the child. So this was one case which we kind of started off with, which was very interesting because it allowed us to do estate planning in the US, life insurance sales, get some assets under management, get some planning done here with trust set up for the parent, and then get additional AUM for an advisor here. So all in all, the case has proved to be fairly nice. We're kind of, as is with larger cases, it takes time. Things are moving on. We've gotten through some portions of it. We're getting through some other portions of it. I'm going to move to the next one. If there are any questions on this case.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I want to come back to the FLP structure. So at what age of the client would you typically recommend something like this? It's around 60s, closer to life expectancy, or when they are much younger?
So that's good. Should I need to repeat the question? The question was that typically at what age is this recommended and should be done? Should the FLP structure be done? So what are the two main concerns of people when they transfer assets? The two main concerns are A, loss of control on the income, and loss of control on the asset. That means if I have money today and I put it in the FLP, my fear is that what about my own future? What about the next 50 years of life probably that I have to live? So I kind of delay this planning. But what it permits to do, this structure permits the general partners to do, is to distribute income and assets in whatever way they see fit. So if this is being set up by me, I can say that, well, let's say I put in assets, let's say I put in some rental property in there. I can have all the income distributed to me alone. So in that way, it goes beyond that age barrier. I have not found, when I sit and talk to a client and I explain to him that he still retains the strings of control on the income and the asset, he's pretty open to doing this structure. Second point is, these limited partnership other interests, it's not necessary that the heirs own all of it instantly. We can have the client own most of it, and over a period of time he can give away portions of it to his children or to his heirs, whoever he wants to give it to. In that way, you do the planning today, but you keep doors open to do the gifting across the lifetime of the client if you want to. So one case I'm doing just now, where he's 67 years old, about 20 million in assets across 5 properties, bought it 30 years ago. One property he bought it in 1980 in Brooklyn at about $15,000 US was his investment. Today it's worth about $3.5 million. So he's got that kind of appreciation. So he wants to, so we're putting it into the family limited partnership, and he is open. He has 5 daughters. He just wants everything out of his name now. He says, I've got enough income coming from different sources. Let all the property go in there and let it get distributed. So we are keeping a very small portion to him and gifting out the rest staggered over a period of time.
Would it also mean that the assets which get into the FLP structure cannot be sold anymore?
I'm sorry?
The assets which get into the FLP structure can't be sold from
Can't be.
cannot sold. You can just generate income.
No, it's not necessary. It can be sold. The person who's the general partner, he has all the rights to do whatever he deems fit to buy, sell, transact, whatever needs to be done.
You were mentioning that it's similar to the HUF setup here, but I don't see a case of similarity because here you're saying that the...
I just wanted it in context of the controlling interest.
It's a very good structure to divide the distribution of income, the same percentage-wise you can specify for each of the partners.
Yes.
And therefore the taxation also gets divided. But in case of an HUF, it's very straightforward. It's treated as one entity. And
Let me clarify. The only similarity or analogy I wanted to give for that was that the Karta controls everything and the general partner controls everything. That's the only similarity, because here I think HUF is taxed as a separate entity, while here the general partner and the limited partners it's a flow-through entity. That means this entity is not taxed. The income is eventually income, capital gain, everything is distributed to the owners based on what is their share. So it's a flow-through entity.
is there something like that in India?
No, I do not know of that. I just wanted to give the similarity for the controlling purpose. If the effect has gone beyond that, I'm sorry for that, but no, that's the only similarity. I think there was a
Shah,
question.
Is it possible to retract now if a particular share is handed out in the FLP to air, say 25%? Is it possible to retract and
Yes,
what it is on the person?
yes, because the general partner can create a distribution and just distribute everything out of the family limited partnership back into his name. He'll have wasted the $40,000. There is some gifting which can be done in the entire lifetime. So you waste that gifting. So it will be a big waste in terms of taxation. But yes, it's possible to do that.
Like a codicil program, you can-
Yes, but you'd waste a lot of money, you'd waste a lot of gifting to the next generation, you'll lose part of that $5 million exemption. So then suddenly the entire 20 million is now taxable. So there are a lot of negatives in it, but yes, it can be done. And that's another thing which clients like. They know that I have an exit out of this. Yes, you were asking.
I have two questions. One on this FLP. Setting up of a FLP need to be done by attorney or even financial planners can do. Is there any regulation for that matter?
There is no regulations, but we will always have an FLP done by an attorney because it's a complex document and a structure. There's a lot of things that need to be included. We do not do. First of all, we do not set up any companies. We do not set up any documents. We just advise on the structure. Then we go to an attorney or a CPA, depending on who's needed to set it up. Some simple entities, we'll go to a CPA and even a CPA can set it up. Complex entities like an FLP need an attorney to form the formation documents which will describe all the rules and regulations to be followed.
So in that case, who would be the fees charged? You would be getting the fee for the advice what you are going to give, and attorney would be charging his fee separately.
Me?
Yeah.
We normally, that's what we do. Our fees are normally, we don't. I put this because it kind of includes everything, but as a fee-based transaction flow, we kind of estimate what hours we will put into the case, and we quote a fee. Like the case which I told you about the real estate, we've quoted, and I'm just being upfront because this is an open room. We've quoted our fees. Me and another planner are working together. We are charging $7,500 fees for our work, which is going to be about 100 hours of work. So it doesn't really cover all the costs, but there is some life insurance involved. So, but that's the kind of, because we'll coordinate, we'll go to the attorney's office with the client, we'll do all the coordination and the quarterbacking of the case. But that's the kind of fees we quoted for, and the client has agreed. Besides the attorney, whatever the attorney will charge, besides what the CPA will charge to set up the companies, etc.
Okay. On the testamentary trust part of it, after once a person passes away, it would be created, it will come into an effect. In that context, whether 40% estate tax need to be paid or how it is?
I didn't get the question.
Testamentary trust, once when the person passes away, it will come into effect. You mentioned that, right? So during that situation, whatever estate or whatever asset he wants to leave it to his beneficiaries, whether that on that asset 40% estate tax need to be paid, or they will get a tax-free assets in their hand?
Okay, great. I'll divide that question into, I'll divide the answer into two parts. Part A, we are talking about when B passes assets to C. That's when the estate taxes are due, correct? That's the point of payment of estate taxes. So if A gives directly assets to B, and even if B is in his will says that everything passes in a trust to my child, there is a step. That means B has ownership of everything, and he says that it should flow into the trust. That in between thing is his passing away, and that means estate tax become due. Okay, that means even if it's a trust into which it's going, estate taxes are due. However, what we did in this case is because A is setting up a trust for B and children, and there is certain language to be used, then when B passes away, the assets which A left flow directly to the child without estate taxes. Because what happens is that, let's say there are two children, so father and two children are named as the beneficiaries of the trust. Father passes away, automatically the two children become beneficiaries. So it's not part of father's estate anymore. And there's certain language to be used for that, which is unequal distribution language, etc., which needs to be incorporated. But that is essentially what this has done here. So by setting up A's testamentary trust, we are skipping the estate tax when it flows from B to C. But if just B set it up and to flow to C and set up a trust, that won't save estate taxes. Make sense? Was I able to answer the question? Okay. Any further? Yes, Shantala.
Yeah, basically in India there is something called revocable and irrevocable trust. Is there same concept there in the US as well?
So that's a step. Actually, that's the first step of trust: revocable and irrevocable trust. Revocable trust means that anything that you put inside, you can take it out and take it back to yourself. That does not solve any estate tax issues, because anything owned in a revocable, that means if you have the right to get it back in your name, it's what is it? It's not out of your estate. Okay. Only irrevocable trusts save estate taxes. So it has to be an irrevocable trust. And once it flows into it, it cannot come out. That's why we have, sometimes what we do is in this particular case, we'll have this interest owned directly and these interests owned through an irrevocable trust, the limited partnership interest. If that is the case, then if the normal cost flows through, then everything that is lying in the irrevocable trust is out of the estate. But if this guy, general partner, still has the opportunity to take it into his own hands, if it goes back into his hands, it becomes estate taxable. So it's an estate tax saving mechanism with a window to kind of protect in case we need to. Yeah, makes sense? Okay.
So the property, some people might have US citizenship but continue to stay in India permanently. They might have created enormous wealth in India. So such person can also get into such models.
Yes, they can. And yet at the same time, that I will take that with a pinch of salt, because we found that sometimes what they're doing is that they're filing in the Indian context, they're filing as Indian residents. They're not saying that they're US citizens. They're filing as local Indian residents. So as far as the Indian government are concerned, they're not NRIs. So how that affects into the whole transaction would need to be kind of, opened thread by thread with an attorney here, a tax attorney or a CA who can handle it here. But other than that, in general, having said that, if it's a US citizen, he has assets here, and those assets are, let's say, properly declared under the FATCA, which Mr. Abhichandani discussed with all of you all last time. If they're all declared properly, then they will be subject to US taxation. So planning is needed here also for those. Now how much, there are lots of debates which go on, which clients here will tell, it's not known, so it's out of there. I'm not talking about those kind of situations. I'm talking about where it is open to the US government, that a US citizen living here has his assets. Then when it passes on to the next generation, he has to count that as part of his estate. It's worldwide estate.
But otherwise, it has been bequeathed by way of writing a will,
Yes.
then they have to shell out estate taxes.
Yeah, even by will to the trust, by only during their lifetime, if it is gifted out, then it's protected. Yeah. And then again, that's all subject to all kinds of gifting laws across both, which are different. So, can get a little complicated. Or it can get very complicated. Okay, move on. Okay, quick. Okay, this is a case where, so client has 3 children, 2 in US, 1 in India. Child in India is in business. In US, they have separate careers. Actually, we are just currently in the process of working in this case, so want to make that very clear. Issues on hand: equitable distribution of wealth, current gifting issues, dual taxation, divorce protection. These are the issues that we are tackling here in the conversation with the client. Now, the parents are in India. They have a business, and one of the child is in the business, and the other children are outside. Now, what happens is that if you just say that the parents want to divide the assets equally between 3 people, then it becomes very unfair. Because the child who's helping in the business is actually making the business grow and helping the business to reach a certain value. So how do we reward that child while he's helping the dad grow the business, and yet at the same time be fair to the other children? These are some of the issues that we're tackling. And yet at the same time, when the parent who's local India gives all this to the children, how do we make it in the best possible way so that it's protected from excessive taxation or divorce, and it's also divorce protected. So some of the things that we came up with was transfer partial ownership in current business to son working with him, formal plan for takeover of assets by children, working child gets business, others get real estate. There was need to be wills in India. Set up a trust in the US with children as beneficiary, provisions for splitting the trust as needed, so that what happens sometimes is that initially everyone gets along and they say if assets are put in a single trust, it's easier to manage, low in cost, but then everyone does not agree on decisions of what to do with that money. One person, when let's say real property is bought, somebody will say that, hey, you know what, let's not sell it now. Other person will say, let's sell it right away. What happens in those situations? Then there are provisions for splitting as needed. The trust provisions can be such that there can be 3 children as or multiple children as beneficiary, with the provision to split it into separate individual sub-trusts for all of them as needed. This case has a lot of work still pending because of all the valuation issues and all that need to be done.
You said the parents are living in India, so why do they need to set up a trust in the US?
Great question. The trust we are setting up in the US is kind of this trust that we're talking about is going to be this one, what's it called, a testamentary trust. That means that when the US, so the will is in India, there's a trust through the will in India, but there needs to be a mirror trust in the US to make it easier to operate. If you take the Indian trust documents and try to use it in the US, it becomes very hard.
There will be another trust also in India that will be, so that the Indian child will also get the,
Yes.
maybe the laws.
It is going to be one trust and one trust with having the provisions to split. So it's going to be equally done in that way. And then how they want to split it, the children can decide amongst themselves. That's the way we're thinking this through.
So does it make a difference if that child in India is a US citizen?
Yeah, that complicates it totally. Because that kind of really messes the whole thing up, because he's currently living and working in India, like you said, and then they're subject to US income taxes, and then if he gets gifts from his parents here currently while working, how that changes everything. Again, if you own a certain percentage in a private limited company, PFIC laws come inside. So there's all kinds of issues to be dealt with there. It's just a generalized solution here just now, but yes, we need to specifically address that lower here. You're correct about that. Okay. And life insurance in India for estate balancing and liquidity for spouse. This is something that is possible if needed. That means that let's say that the business has a very large value and the real estate has certain values. How can you balance it out if the child is going to get the business? I mean, paying it out to, let's say that me and my sister are there, and we received a business from my dad, and I got the business. There's not, the value of the business is much larger than the real estate which she gets. How does it balance out? If I'm to pay her over a period of time, then after some time, if I stop paying her, what does she do? How does she fight it out? Instead of that, sometimes just adding some life insurance to estate balancing may just do the trick, you know. So that is a possibility that you can do that in here to balance it out between the children. Okay, make sense? Okay, let's move ahead. Let's take this US citizen who came back to India, and he had a he had a business in the US, and he does what's called a SEP IRA. This is something that I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on. So, all of you all have time and time again come across US people who are citizens or who've worked in the US for some time and come back again, and most of them will have some kind of mechanism by which they have tried to save taxes while they were earning money using either IRAs, 401k plans, profit sharing plans, defined benefit. You'll hear all those different terms. Essentially, what are those terms? So I'm going to describe this from the business owner's perspective because that's the market that I work a lot in. Business owner, and this is the operating company which he owns. The income that he earns in this company, he has the opportunity to put away some of that income away for a day when he's no longer working. The important rule in this is that he can put it away for himself, but he also has to do the same for all his employees, all his full-time employees. In this case, full-time employees are described as those who work more than 1,000 hours a year. That's more than 20 hours a week. Those are the ones who are described as full-time employees. Now, there are about 7 to 8 different section codes which are given by the IRS under which you can take this deduction. There are IRAs which are done by individuals only. A 401k plan is a one which is set up by the business for the employees to put in their own money. Then there is SEP IRAs and profit sharing plans, and I'm really running through this quickly, but there is profit sharing plans which in the business owner puts in money for all his employees. And then finally there are defined benefit plans which allow us to put in pretty large amounts of pre-tax dollars. I mean, we've done plans whereby a father and son business, they could put away pre-tax $200,000 and save that much. So they were earning about $500,000 between the two of them in the business, and they were paying tax at the marginal tax bracket for them was about 40% income tax on their top earnings. We showed them a way to put away pre-tax $200,000 that brought the combined income down to $300,000, split between the two of them. That saved considerable taxes, and this money then gets invested. When it is taken out, you pay taxes on it. So these are different section codes. The important thing from you when you are looking at any statement is to understand one main perspective. When the money went in, was there a deduction for the purpose of taxes? Did it help reduce the income or not? If it helped reduce the income, then when it comes out, taxes have to be paid on it. That's a simple rule, and it could be any of these. It could be any of these titles. So what our goal as planners up there, and for me, I built my practice on this thing essentially because it was a very easy conversation with business owners. I mean, all of you all know that you can always get working with business owners. Usually, you can end up doing more lines of business than doing with an individual who's doing a job. So We can do health insurance, and we can do group disability, and we can do 401k plans, and we can do key man insurances, a ton of different things besides their personal planning. So what happens is that my market tends to be 1 to 5 employees, and what we do is we'll take their income, and we'll take how much they need for themselves, how much they want to put away for the future, and based on that we'll run different numbers across different section codes and see which plan is suitable for them based on all the costs. So that's a design part that we do there in the US. I just wanted to take a few moments because I've often been asked questions like what, mostly as an employee, for employees you'll see a 401k statement. Well, 401k, what is a 401k? It's essentially a pre-tax plan which the employer has set up for employee to put away some money for himself. And sometimes the employer on top also adds some money into it. But the central property is that it's pre-tax money. When it will be taken out, it will be taxed. And if you take it out earlier than 59 and a half, then you have to pay an additional penalty of 10%. So let's say that on your marginal tax bracket, you're paying, your marginal tax bracket is 25%. Then when you take out $100,000, you pay $25,000 as income taxes plus 10% as penalty if you're taking out before 59 and a half. If you're doing it after 59 and a half, it's you don't pay the penalty. It's as I like to joke that 59 and a half, I don't know why they picked 59 and a half. I mean, it sounds funny, and really nobody has an answer to that question. I think it was a bunch of senators sitting in a room. One guy said 65, one guy said 55, and they averaged it out and they came to 59 and a half. So, but yes, please.
So in all these cases, the employee has to contribute, or is it in any one of them does the employer, I'm just thinking as a business succession plan too.
The 401k is the only one in which the employee contributes from his own income. In all, and the IRA. IRA is a personal account. Other than that, all the others, SEP IRA, profit sharing plan, 401k, the second component which we call the match, defined benefit plans, in every other type of plan, it is the employer who's putting in money for the employees. Now, for the it is used, and in fact in the same case which I talked about, now that you bring it out, I take a minute to go through that. What we did was that this was the father and son, the same case I'm talking about, $500,000 of income. One guy takes $250,000, the other guy takes $250,000. Son wanted to buy out the father. Okay, so what we did was that from the $200,000 we did what's defined benefit plan. $160,000 was going to the father and only $40,000 was going to the son. So effectively over 5 years, the difference, which is $120,000, the son was paying the father $120,000 times 5, which is $600,000, and that was the business succession plan. It was a buyout plan, and the father would get retirement account money which he could use for his own benefit in retirement. So you're absolutely right. We can use this. We also use this as sometimes as a means to do what is called buy-sell planning. That means if there are two partners, what happens traditionally is one of the partners passes away, then this guy automatically becomes partner with his deceased partner's family, and that may not necessarily be a situation that they want. So there is an ability to use some portion of this money in a profit sharing plan and a defined benefit plan to buy life insurance. We buy pre-tax money life insurance, and then that life insurance is on each other's lives. So the money comes into the plan when the person passes away, and that money is used by the surviving partner to pay the family of the deceased and take control of the business. So that's another way in which we can use these plans for business succession planning. Estate planning, when we talk about estate planning, again digressing from the whole presentation for a moment, but when we talk about estate planning, there are three stools on which, there are three legs of that stool. It's my time. Right? Okay. There are three parts. First part, whenever you're talking with anybody about estate planning, you have to talk about retirement planning, because First, a person feels that, well, you know what, I want to be secure in the rest of my life. That's the first part of it. Then the second part of it which he wants to do is business succession planning. That means how does he transfer the one asset that he has put his blood, sweat and toil into and created so much value, how does he transfer it and extract maximum value? And then the third part is how does all of this translate to the next how does all of this go to the next generation? So in cases where in cases where there is no family member who's going to buy into the business, we've used other tools like I just want to take the terminology, deferred compensation plans, whereby employees who remain with the company for 10 years will get a certain amount of money at the end of 10 years, and they can use that money to then buy out the business owner. And they're paid for their loyalty and help in building the value of the business. That's a planning that we do in terms of business succession planning. Within the family, we already talked about it, but this is outside of the family also we do that. Okay.
All at the time of withdrawal is taxed.
Sorry?
At the time of withdrawal by the employee is taxed.
No, in this case, if the employer has made the investments for the employees, either in the form of a retention or whatever way it is, so whenever the employee withdraws it, or
he pays income tax.
He pays the tax on it.
That is correct, because the employer took a deduction on the business's income and expense statement for the money he put into the plan. That means the government received less taxes at that time. But the employee is not paying taxes on it because this plan is tax deferred. He will pay, so eventually Uncle Sam will receive his money only when the distribution takes place from the plan. So even on the portion that is put in by the employer, there is taxes are to be paid.
In the Indian context, it should be a EET, exempt taxable, or any pension plan. Any retirement plan in India is taxed.
Okay, so yeah, there is an equivalence. Yeah, I wouldn't know that, but yeah, thank you for doing that. Anything else before? So this was simple. We just got, in this case, we got legal documents for his parents. We set up a lot of local investments for him, but and trust considered if he's renouncing citizenship. That's the part that I really wanted to bring about as one of the things which we've talked about. So there are certain types of trust which can be set up wherein if income is there in the trust, then the trust is not paying any tax on it till the money is distributed out. Okay, it's a complex setup. I'm not going too much, but just flow with me. So the trust earns income, let's say in the year 2010, does not distribute it, has not paid any tax on it. It distributes it in the year 2020, and the person is a US citizen, okay? All along I'm talking about a US citizen. Then when it is distributed in 2020, then at that time he has to pay he has to go back to his 2010 tax return, evaluate how much taxes he would have paid in that year if he had got the income, plus pay all the interest for all these years. So it almost becomes worthless, and it's a terrible way to do it. But that has got one flip side to it. If a person does something like that and eventually is going to renounce citizenship and pay the exit taxes, there is an exit tax in the US which not many people know. When you renounce citizenship, all your assets, you have to show that these are all the assets. Now I'm no longer a citizen, and if it goes above 5.5 million, you have to pay federal estate tax equivalent on it at that time, and then get into then become a citizen of another country wherever you're eligible. So
What would be the percentage?
just let me finish this, just give me 1 second. So hold on to that question. So if a person is thinking of relinquishing his citizenship, then if his money is inside this trust, in 2020 when he is going to receive the income, he is not a US citizen anymore. So it's not subject to US taxes. So this trust can be used. This is one of the things that we are going to talk about. If he was kind of mentioning to me that he might want to do this, so we might consider this kind of trust for the Indian assets, which is now built up being here, and therefore income would be deferred, and then eventually he'd only pay Indian taxes when he's coming out of that situation and not pay any US taxes. So that's another possibility. Only if a person is willing to renounce US citizenship. I don't know many who are willing to do that even though they live here. But if that comes, there can be prospective planning done. Yes, Shantala, your question.
What would the exit tax?
I'm sorry?
What about the tax?
Ex-
Exit tax?
Yes.
So when you relinquish the citizenship,
It's like the estate tax.
how much could it be?
40% above 5.5 million. That's the exit taxes. So you paid on current. A lot of it is done by actually exit taxes end up being paid by hedge fund managers. I mean, these guys are young guys. At 40, they have accumulated $25-30 million, and suddenly they find themselves in all this estate tax situation and all, and they can continue doing their work by going and settling in, say, Bermuda or somewhere, in some island somewhere in the Caribbean. If they want to do that, then on the amount of assets that they have above 5.5 million, they pay the estate taxes. They leave renounce it, go to another residency, and then from that point, all their growth is outside of US estate taxes. So that's something that is explored. Of course, nobody likes to pay current taxes. They say that what if my assets go down? I'd have wasted money paying taxes. So that's a yes, please.
When they relinquish their citizenship up to $5.5 million, they don't have to pay any
Exit tax. That is correct.
So there is one more option. They can gift the asset.
Well, a lot of people have thought about that. So US has gifting and inheritance and estate taxes are merged into one law. In your lifetime, you can either gift 5.5. If you gift above $5.5 million, that means if I were to gift my child $11 million, that means 5.5. Then the amount above 5.5 have to pay gift taxes, which is the same as paying estate taxes.
No, it is per person, if I'm right.
No, it's to anybody
In their lifetime.
in the giver's lifetime.
The giver's lifetime. Okay.
And then if they do that, then they lose that 5.5 million. I have 5.5 million to give away. I can give it away today, or I can give it away when I die. I can give away parts of it today. That means I can do 1 million now and reserve 4.5 million to give away later on. So you have just one block of 5.5 million.
That is for gifting, and he can retain still $5.5 million for himself. Or
No.
both. It is
Combined together. It's a unified law. Estate and gift taxes are a unified law up there. Yeah. Well thought of, but yes, it's already been thought, considered, and put into place. Put to rest. Yes. Any further questions? Okay. Let's go to the last one. Clients in India. Client is US citizen, moved to India. Double that happened. Double. Has assets in the US, retirement on non-retirement, goals, kids' education in the US, retirement income after 10 years, may want to settle back in the US if kids go there. And this was actually a relatively simple case. I mean, in the sense that there was no estate tax payable on 7 million because between husband and wife there 11 million is permitted. But they wanted retirement income after 10 years. So we put into place some so we put cash aside for the college education. We put together some. Am I doing something wrong?
No, tell me.
Am I okay? So we move. I'll move to that. Sorry.
Mobile.
Okay, fine. So we put retirement account in guaranteed retirement account, variable annuities in US. That's an instrument that we've been using in the US very actively. So what is the biggest challenge? Somebody, one of the questions in the earlier, the quiz that was put was negative interest rates and almost zero interest rates. So lack of secured income has become probably the biggest challenge for retirees in the US today. I mean, In 2000, if you retired, you had $1 million, $50,000 of annual income. Today, that $1 million will generate only less than $10,000 a year as interest income. So what's the solution? And somebody last time when I did this, not in this room, but I think in another room, somebody converted to Indian rupees and earn 8%. No, sorry, that doesn't work out very well because of currency depreciation. So I don't accept that as an option. But what we did was we do variable annuities. That's a way in which you invest the money and it grows. It's an IRA account, so it grows tax deferred. But at a certain age, you can have guaranteed income from it. So it has, say, a 5% or a 6% growth rate on the money. And then at the end of that period of time, it gives a guaranteed income for lifetime. We use these products extensively in this time when there is low incomes. The catch to it is that the capital that you actually put in might erode completely and your children might not get anything. Sometimes it's become pretty okay to do that in the US, and primarily reason for that is longevity. If people are living into their 90s, so if they retired at 65, 70, then they have 30 years in retirement. And when they pass away in their 90s, probably their heirs are about to retire. So the heirs are not really depending, I shouldn't say not really depending, everyone depends on inheritance. I mean, everyone keeps every day counting when they're going to get their money. I shouldn't say that. But having said that, let's just assume that they plan their own life well. And when you're living such a long time, inflation kicks in. I mean, you all have seen inflation here. In the US, we have 2 to 3% inflation, but even that translates into a lot of difference. Like, I like to give this example. The cost of a first-class postage stamp in the US in 1980 was 10 cents. Today we are at 47 cents. So the basic cost of living in 35 years has gone 3.5 times. Now previously 35 years didn't matter so much, who cared about inflation across 35 years when you have 2 to 3% inflation. But think about it, someone who has a $1 million and say is getting a fixed rate. Let's say he's guaranteed to even get say 5%. That means $50,000 as income. After 35 years, that means if he's 65 and he's 95, after 30 years, that is worth 1/3 in terms of purchasing power. So inflation is actually one of the biggest silent, I call it the silent tax, because it really erodes people's wealth and erodes people's income over a period of time. So when you're looking at that kind of thing, how these variable annuities permit us to do the planning in a way that there is rising income and guaranteed income across this entire period of time.
You mentioned guaranteed. What is the guarantee that they are giving after inflation?
I'm sorry? It depends. Some products have a growth rate of 4% and an income of 5%. Some have a growth rate of 6% and then an income of 4%. There are different products, and we set the product based on the person's age and his planning, etc. There are about 40 different companies that offer these type of products, and we got to select between the best one. Again, that's a product. No, I don't. In this case, it was considered. There are several options which we consider. I mean, one theory that was very much popular in the U.S., which I think is it's called the Trinity study, and it was done in 1995-96 by professors at Trinity College. These guys did a brilliant analysis. They took 30-year rolling periods, right, starting all the way from 1910 and going up to 1996-97 when they actually published the study. And what they did was that if you have a 50-50 portfolio of stocks and bonds, maybe you can even use funds, then if you withdraw 4% out of that portfolio, then there is a less than 5% chance using Monte Carlo simulations, actually less than 1% chance using Monte Carlo simulations. Everyone familiar with Monte Carlo simulations, I'm assuming, right? So using Monte Carlo simulation, there's a less than 1% chance that you will run out of money after 30 years. Okay, so 4%, or you could do 3% with a 3% inflation. You could do one of those two portfolios and you'll not run out of money. Well, that theory actually crashed in the twin crashes of 2000 and 2007. Because when they took those 2 years into consideration and they took a 30-year period starting 1990 going up to now, actually 1985 going up to now, then the portfolios failed, 5% of portfolios failed. So the probability of failure went up. In that case, what you want to do is you want to kind of take a balance. You want to sometimes put in annuities, sometimes you want to put in portfolios. If keeping the capital, and this happens mostly with when I work with families from India, that is, they don't want a situation in which, you know what, all the money eventually nothing will be paid to my heirs. I don't like that. Then they really oppose this. So we try to split it between that and that so that you can create a good balance of guaranteed income and a 3% or a 4% withdrawal income.
Is there any withdrawal which is tax free?
I'm sorry?
Is there any withdrawal?
There is. We have bond funds which are municipal bond funds which are completely income tax free. Those are invested in state, municipal, but these days long-term portfolios of those bonds are only yielding 2.5%. And sometimes in retirement, when you don't have active income, you know, the first up to 90,000 of income, there is very marginal taxes compared to higher income. So actually in retirement, we don't see too much use of municipal bonds. We see use of this in certain cases when people have good rental properties, large amount of rental properties and all. We may use municipal bonds, or we may even use life insurance to create adequate cash values and draw withdrawals from them which are tax free. There are several opportunities there, but in this case it was not really needed. Put legal documents in place, perpetual trusts in will, mirror trusts in India. That's what I explained to you earlier, that you have trusts on both the sides. At the end of before I go to the concluding questions. Okay. Essentially, what I'm seeing more and more is, from this conversation, you can make out that the complexity of the laws on both sides give us great opportunity as holistic planners to work towards serving these families. I might even go a step further, and this is just stretching it a little too much, but I might go a step further and say that actually we would not be doing right if we didn't consider both sides. If we didn't consider everything. As planners, we need to. Sometimes me personally, I shouldn't say we, sometimes I hesitate to ask the tough questions and get all the facts, and that may result in not giving complete advice to my clients in the right way. But what I've found is that when you're able to ask those questions, ascertain all those facts, then you can get AUM, life premium, planning fees, but most important thing, client retention. And there's substantial scope of fee-based work in this particular area. Before I conclude, I'd like to just open the floor to any questions. One housekeeping requirement. I think you all have been given an evaluation sheet. That is something that I would like you to kind of complete and give it back. I need that feedback to change things or improve things if as time goes by. But I'll open the floor to any further questions before I conclude.
Sir,
Yes.
about variable annuities, so if they are guaranteeing the return, okay, I'll speak louder. Okay.
So in case of variable annuities, where there is a guaranteed return, increasing at a certain rate into the future. So what is the source of such income to annuity manufacturers? So how do they ensure? If
how do they ensure?
Yeah.
That's good. That's a normally what they're doing is that there is a gap. So the amount of money you put in has to grow to a certain amount of money, and then the insurance company can automatically by distribution pay you the amount. So they have a chart as to what that amount should be in order for them to pay you that amount of money. Plus what happens is that the insurance company, as you know from the laws of large numbers, they own the average. So they're going to pay some people only 1 or 2 years, they're going to pay some people 20 years, they're going to pay some people 40 years. So by using those probabilities, they are able to see where that account should be. And if that account is not where they should be, there's a gap between what that account should be and where that account needs to be. And that gap is covered by them using options as a mechanism, and that's where they charge the fees in the account to buy those options. So it's a pretty complexly manufactured product, but insurance companies can do that because they have substantial sums to do it. Also, there's another product called direct annuitization. That means you take a pool of money, you give it to the insurance company, you'll never see that money again, but they'll give you a guaranteed income for life. Insurance companies, that's a counterbalance to the life insurance. So insurance companies sell both the products, and that's an exact counter to life insurance. In that case, if you die early, the insurance company profits, while in life insurance, if you die early, the insurance company loses. But in this case, if you live long, you get more money. In the life insurance, if you live long, the insurance company. So they can do cross, they can counter the two risks in each other and also use this other thing in order to do it. So I may not have described it perfectly because I'm not an actuary, but this is what I have understood from the actuary as the means to do this.
The reason I ask this question is, does it create any systemic risk in the region of or in the times of negative returns?
In the times of negative interest.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. The negative interest is essentially creating a huge strain on the life insurance industry wherever there are low interest rates, because essentially 80 to 90% of any insurance company's reserve funds are invested in fixed rate instruments. Plus the reserves that they have to keep in this low in this low interest rate environment goes up when the interest rates are low. So it is creating pressures. However, to counteract those pressures, fortunately for them, especially in the US, longevity has just shot up so much that like life claims which they were, when they issued those policies 30, 40 years ago, they were supposed to be paid now, have gone forward by another 10 years. So longevity has actually helped the insurance company to counterbalance this effect of low interest rate at this moment. It's not a perfect world or a perfect science out there, a perfect calculation. They might be having it, I don't know about it, but they've been hedging themselves against this kind of situation. Also, what they've done recently is most of the companies which have participating policies, the dividends on those policies have shrunk considerably because of that particular reason. So that's another way in which they're controlling their outflow.
Annuities are only life annuities. What I meant to ask is there any option to get return of purchase price kind of thing in US?
What type of?
Whatever money they have invested for buying an annuity,
you can
is
get
there an option?
You can get return of premium clauses inside that also.
So even that option is available.
Yeah, because then you have to pay an additional cost. There's a fee. So you pay that additional fee, and that's like for an insurance company, that's like life insurance on that money. So if you put in $500,000, they'll just price out what it costs on $500,000 for life insurance of that, and they'll charge additional fees inside the product, and you can have a return of premium product.
So you mean to say even underwriting would be there even in annuity products?
No, it's not an underwriting. It's like just assumed averages, assumed average mortalities. They don't do underwriting, but they do charge a fee, and I'm just telling you how they calculate that fee.
Okay.
It's just a flat fee, like 0.25% of the amount or something, which is an annual fee that they charge on the account balance in order to give you the return of premium clause.
Even in return of purchase price annuity kind of thing, growth and income can be
very
designed?
Very hard because the costs just go up so substantially. In order to keep the cost down, you have to prevent those rising incomes to be included inside.
Okay, but still option is available.
It doesn't work out. I've just done the number. It doesn't work out. So we might say it is there, but it doesn't work out. So you run out of money so quickly that at certain provisions, that even though you buy return of premium, the return of premium can vanish. The insurance company does keep that one clause, and if you do the rising income, then that return of premium vanishes fairly quickly. So you would have paid the money for all these years and you lose out the death benefit in the end. So it doesn't work out. You don't want to do that.
Thank you.
Okay? I hope that makes sense. Yes, please.
Most of the presentations you are using life insurance as an investment option.
Yes.
Generally here we presume, at least nowadays, the life insurance is not giving a proper return for Indians. Most of the traditional plans at least. So what is the difference between a normal investment return and life insurance return there?
So one of the things that I believe, I'll leave it to you guys to tell me why you believe that life insurance is not an investment, but I think that it's because of inflation primarily. I mean, you buy a $500,000 policy in the year or 500,000 rupee policy in year 2000, and today 500,000 is not worth it. But what we have done there, if you buy 500,000 in 2000, today also $500,000 is worth money. What we've done is we found that in a low interest environment rate, we found a planning technique called wealth replacement strategy. And what we do is, let's say that that person has say, and I'm taking round numbers and this may not necessarily be perfect, but let's say he has $10,000 to invest. So you can use, and let's say this $10,000 is going to go up to say $1 million. Again, I'm using very round numbers, so let's take a period of 40 years. This $1 million, it's going to be there at the end of 40 years. Now what do you do in retirement? You keep this intact and you draw income out of it. Okay. Another way to do this in a low, especially in a low interest environment, is instead of taking 10,000, let's say you take 7,000 and you put 3,000 towards a life premium which you pay for 40 years. And because of rising death benefit possible in participating policy, let's say it's going to give you $1 million of guaranteed death benefit for whole life from this $3,000. Again, you have to look at every case and we do very detailed calculation. Now this is going to generate only 70%. That means there's going to be only 700. There's going to be only 700,000 in here, right? Because you're putting in 10,000 here and you put in 7,000 here. But what you can do is you can consume this entire 7,000. You use it up completely, and that helps because then when you're taking principal and interest from the 700, the income can be more than just the income on the $1 million. And then this $1 million comes as a replacement, as a wealth replacement at the time of death. So that's in the present level of interest rates in the US, because if you're taking only income, you're getting only 2, 3, maybe 4%. Even using the withdrawal theory, you get only 3 or 4% income. But in this case, if you're able to consume this principal completely, and sometimes we can even use the annuities for that. I mean, I'm not going into all of that, but just to let you know that this wealth replacement in a low interest rate environment, the wealth replacement using the life insurance can act as a very powerful tool to generate guaranteed and more income in retirement. So,
the problem we face is generally the life insurance generates around 4 to 5% return year, and annuities generate 7% taxable income. So both of them are not commensurate to the regular income even on a FDs people get. So
I agree with you. I think that is a challenge which might, okay, I'm not even saying, with the present regime taking a very strong stance towards bringing down the inflation to 4%, and if that kind of brings down the overall interest rates into this thing, then you might really see good trends toward these kind of products coming back. As of today, I totally agree with you. In the Indian context, it might not make sense at all. But it might, because, I mean, just simple, what I think, Loai, we did some calculations at one time. Over 10 years, equity, standard equity fund is 15% year-on-year returns, you know. I mean, if that kind of money is being grown and that is kind of keeping up with the inflation, how can you, provided you have the cost to, you have the stomach to bear those bad years, then how can it ever keep up to the to the life insurance, this one. So it may not work out today, but as you see interest rates coming down here, that might certainly creep in as a possibility. Make sense?
Still, there is also a perception that now, actually compared to 15 years back, insurance is a bad investment.
I think you can really make a case on that. I mean, I personally am totally against that concept.
But we are unable to defend that argument because we are seeing consistently where we have given life insurance for people 15 years back. They are losing for the last 15 years consistently, and all other investments were generating multiples of return. So defending that case will be very difficult.
Little perspective, Mr. Shah, if I may. What I think Mr. Srinivasan is going into is this recommendation on taking a term policy and investing the difference in premium into a fixed income product actually has generated higher income, even if you don't consider equity, though equity is performing extremely well. So,
yes, and I've not done a study here, but I do believe generally from my conversations, even with Lowai, whatever conversation I've had, that is true as of today.
yes.
There will come a time when it will change, and especially for us with the twin crashes of 2000 and 2007, the value of guaranteed products has just shot through the roof. And low interest rate today I can design an insurance product to give a guaranteed 3% income tax-free income in retirement with a 3% growth rate. Now that for somebody who's looking for pure guarantee. I have a client. He puts into his pension plan $350,000 a year. He's a technology guy in Manhattan, runs a firm which now has 300 people, including an office in Bangalore now, which has about 80 people, and it's growing considerably. When I met them, they had about 25 people, and it was their first year of operation. In 5 years, they've gone to 300 people with operations in India and this way. He's the CEO and co-owner of the business. He puts in about $350,000 into the pension plan. He said, I do not care if you give me even 1.5%, but I need to know that my money in the next statement should never be below my previous statement. Yeah, great. Let's buy these things, So
The problem we face again is the word called guarantee, because as the interest rate goes down, we suspect even the return from fixed income insurance will go down further. Because we have not seen in the last 15 years, the return is it is not even going to beat inflation, forget.
I would say that that's contestable because of two reasons. First of all, it takes time for the interest rate of the insurance company to go down because they have bonds. Like just to tell you, US, what are the problems just now with insurance companies? The thing that you mentioned about lowering, they're still able to maintain their dividends to a certain point and their guaranteed cash values. Why? Because in 90s, they bought 30-year US bonds. Those have not yet matured. I mean, if they buy it in 1990, it will mature in 2020. The problem they are having is when that 2020 will have to be reinvested. So they have a whole tranche of what we call laddered bond portfolios, which keep maturing time and time again. The only thing that they have to really manage is credit rate risk. So they are still able to give a better return. Now, if this 1% is already persisted for 8 years and yet they're feeling pinch, but they're not completely out, completely able to lose. Similar, as the interest rates fall, it won't be overnight that the insurance company's dividends will go down. It will go down eventually, but not immediately. So there is a big case out there, and again, it's in an environment like here where you have asset classes which go 5 times, 7 times in 10 years, 15 years, it's very hard to make a case for the products that we deal with. I think it's a matter of time, and it's a matter of certain clients that you need to do it. Yes, please.
In continuation with the question related with life insurance, is there any restriction on the investments of the premium in life insurance space in US? Like
There
in
are two
India?
separate types of products. There are two separate types of products. We call it variable life products, which are the equivalent of, which I think ULIPs, right? ULIP type of products that you guys have here. And then there is the traditional whole life products. When I'm selling life insurance, I do not sell any variable life products. I sell only whole life, traditional whole life products, because when I'm selling a life insurance product, it's purely with the intention of creating a guaranteed income for my client, or a guaranteed death benefit, or something which is guaranteed. That's what I want to do. So I focus only on that part. In the traditional product, because you're investing in the whole life type of products, the money is directly invested in the general account of the insurance company, so that's where the money goes. You have the ULIP type of products, which we call variable life, where you have a choice of mutual funds to invest from.
Where does they invest from that general account of the insurance company?
Normally
the underlying assets?
Underlying assets are so huge, like Guardian, which I do a lot of business with, has $40 billion of general funds. So if it is MetLife, you might have heard, it's about $100 billion of underlying general fund account. So they usually, what I find is about 80 to 90% of that portfolio is in fixed income assets. Some of it may be real estate and some of it may be equity, but 80 to 90% of the money is fixed income assets.
No, generally the challenge what we are facing in India is, in particularly traditional products, the money has to, the premium what has been collected has to be invested in government bonds, government securities, approved securities kind of thing, to the extent of 65%, and 20% can be there in the fixed securities kind of thing. So 85% would be earning a lower return. So after taking the management expenses, the bonus what people are going to get as a policy holder would be always less.
You see, there is one income of an insurance company which is generally forgotten, and that's called mortality credits, which is helping US a lot, which will help in India a lot in coming days. That means that, let's say that they planned 20 years ago that they're going to pay from 1,000 policy holders, they're going to pay 100 people death claim today. They're actually paying only 50 people death claim. So that kind of helps them retain money and actually increase their earnings. That's mortality credit. That is one source of income which is not available to any other investment. And if mortality rates keep coming, that means if the mortality age, longevity keeps affecting India the way it has affected US in terms of better and better healthcare, for the insurance buyers, that means for that category of people who are mostly insurance buyers, then the insurance company will be able to keep paying the returns that they are. I'm not comparing it with what the returns are on real estate and on equity. I don't think there's a case here for that in here just now, which and I'm not the best person. You guys are the best persons to judge that. I would leave the analysis of this market to you, but I'm finding there, I mean, like real estate crashed. We're barely coming out to prices which we had in 2007 just now. So in that kind of environment, these kind of guaranteed products hold really well.
You never recommend term products, term insurance?
Term, yeah.
Term insurance you never recommend to your customers?
Always. First I start with term. But we have fortunately up there what is called convertible term. That means you can buy say $1 million of term, and then without taking a medical, you can convert it to whole life as and when you want across the term of that term. That means if it's a 20-year term, anytime in the 20 years you can convert it to whole life without taking a medical. So I recommend a lot of convertible term, especially to the younger people, because they need insurance at cheaper rates earlier, and later on they may want to buy permanent, but their health may not permit it, or their health may make it more expensive. So buy term at today's health rating and then convert it if you want to, otherwise let it expire if you've accumulated enough money. I mean, I'll tell you, the number might sound astounding to you, but this year the face amount that I have already done is about $22 million of face amount of life insurance, face amount only. Out of that, barely 2.5-3 million must be whole life. Rest is all term. We sell a lot of term, but we keep it convertible, and we also sell whole life when we sell it. When we want to do this type of work, or when we want to do the buy-sell work in the pension plan, things like that.
On the cost of selling the product, over the years should go up.
I'm sorry?
Every product has its cost to serve. Insurance product is also one. After incorporating all the costs, the profit is what is distributed as bonus.
Yes.
So as time goes by, the cost will also go up, and it will impact the product.
Why will the cost go up?
Inflation is go up. Even the salaries, everything is paid out of the premium.
So you do understand net amount at risk? Thought all of this through. I mean, a person who starts off with a policy of say $1 million and he pays premium, at the end of 30 years, the amount at risk is only $600,000, because that's the difference between the cash value, which belongs to the client, and the total amount paid off as death benefit. So when the net amount at risk has come down, even if the costs rise, cost per $10,000 of risk has come down for the insurance company, or it's maintained for the insurance company.
Last question. This is the last question.
No, I mean, yeah, I think, yeah, let's take one more question. Let's finish your question. Yeah.
Yeah, 1 second.
You can take it offline afterwards. Or.
These are largely privately owned insurance companies, right? Because in India, people believe LIC if it's guaranteed. So in that context,
Yeah, so I agree with you that these are privately owned insurance companies, but not all of them are stock companies. They are mutuals, like life insurance. Corporation of India is a mutual. That means it's owned by the policyholders. So a lot of the good companies which we work with, which are more than 150 years old, are mutuals. So they're owned by their policyholders. They'd have good practices in place, and that's your and my job, right? To ensure that we get the quality companies which will last for the next several years, or create a diversified portfolio of insurance also across 4 or 5 different companies. When we have large amounts like 10 million, 12 million of insurance to be done, we might even divide it over 3 companies. So that's possible. Okay.
A round of applause to Mr. Paresh Shah.
Thank you. Nova had warned me that, when I came in here, that this is going to be an audience that's going to be tough to manage. The levels are very high. I must say he was absolutely right. So I thank you all for all the questions. It's really great.
He's one of our mentors, so he knows it.
Yeah. So thank you very much for that.
So thank you, sir, for sharing valuable information with cross-border financial planning. And it's nice that you have taken 4 different case studies and covered the areas encompassing estate planning, family limited planning, inheritance protection, estate duty, the use of insurance in estate duty, and so on. And I also thank most of the members today for being so active, especially Vinod Lakshmikant Rao, Narendra, B. Srinivasan, Naveen Rego. We had Dilshad, Nidhi, and all. So it's nice to see such an active participation. So I invite Mr. B. Srinivasan to come on dais and present a memento to Mr. Paresh Shah. Sir, once again I request you to come here on the dais.